I was in college, and my dad had to go. I was at SUNY Albany, in upstate New York, and my father had to go to the bursar's office, I think it's called, where you have to like pay the tuition. So he went one day on his own, and he came back and he looked at me. I was like 18 or 19 at the time. He said, "Moutasem, you're getting married, and you're getting married right away, because I don't know how you're going to survive the fitna that is on that campus." Because my father didn't want me to cross any boundaries of Allah and His Messenger, sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa ala alihi. But one thing I'm seeing now also with a lot of, in our community, people are getting married, the men, at an older age.
Yeah.
Now we could chalk that up to immaturity and this and that, and people are like, oh, well, the men of your generation or past generations are not like the young men now. But I'm a big proponent for people getting married younger, because it protects their deen and it protects them from great fitna. What's your perspective on this, Shaykh Yasir?
No, I mean, I'm certainly a proponent of responsible young people getting married. And I think the asterisk of responsible for me is critical, because there are certainly young people, young men and young women, who have that types of heads on their shoulder,
right,
that are capable of really managing the affairs of a marriage, of being responsible for an other, of tending to the needs of an other, of having a vision and having a purpose, and meaning having a bigger idea of what life is about. I think there are young people who are very, ready and willing to, at the very least, grow in that capacity. And I think that's a critical addendum as well, which is there's a difference between someone being quote unquote 100% ready. I don't think anyone is really 100%. You could be 45. If you've never been married, trust me, you're not ready for marriage.
Absolutely true.
You're not ready for what's coming your way.
Yeah.
But you have to be open and susceptible to growth and development. And that's where I believe that, yes, we want to see our children capable, independent, that they can carry a burden. But even if they're not 100% there, if they're 50, 60% there, that's still a good thing. Yeah. And that's something, if there's room for growth, then you can even operate like scaffolding as the foundations are being poured and built. And then you can remove those scaffoldings at a certain point. But I'm given so many factors. I think the fact that we have made marriage complicated in some of our cultures, some of our Muslim communal cultures, I think that's a huge reason for much of the hardship we see and experience, because the Prophet ﷺ said, "إن جاءكم من ترضون دينه وخلقه فزوجوه وإن لم تكن أو وإن لم تفعلوا تكن فساد في الأرض." Like, if the one who has good character and good deen comes to you, then marry them. Because if you were to not, then you will see much corruption on the earth. And so this frivolous, kind of at times meaningless, like, when in the future, like some arbitrary moment, when you have the money, when you've bought, when you've purchased, then you can very often be a recipe for a lot of problems. So
yeah, absolutely. And like, I'm looking back and I'm thinking about, my brothers and sisters. When one of my sisters got married, and subhanAllah, was my father, subhanAllah, he was a proponent of that beautiful saying of Al-Rasul al-Kareem alayhi salatu wassalam, that when someone comes and their deen is upright and their character is upright, don't refuse. And so someone came and asked for my sister Naeem, asked for my sister Raham, and he was still in college. And, Naeem was still struggling, a student at RPI, trying to make it. And my father was like, no, he's a good man. I would send my daughter to the moon with this man. And so what did my dad do? We had a basement in the house. This is in upstate New York. And at the time we were living, I think, in Niskayuna. And he redid the basement as an apartment. And he said that this is for Reham and Naeem to live in and to be in, because my father wanted to be a support for them to start their lives and move on in what Allah and His Messenger sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa alayhi love. So it's like you said, I don't think the time is ever right. We all
going back to Gaza, and I'm going to make the tie.
Yeah.
When you think about marriage in Gaza, you've seen those videos of like 1,000 Ghazans getting married together.
I've seen some.
You've seen those videos. I'm sure maybe we can find one.
Yeah.
Did you ever think about what that actually is as like a cultural manifestation, a communal manifestation, culturally speaking? Because in reality, that's just an indication of we're facilitating marriage for a large swath of our community who otherwise cannot get married.
Right.
You know, I heard Sheikh Omar Suleiman talk about this. It was a very beautiful reflection that he had. And that, you know, they basically facilitate for us. It's like you have to plan for years to have enough money to just rent out the whatever and be able to pay off the laundry list of things that need to be expected just before it can get it. But in where there's barakah, where there's barakah, where there's simplicity, there's barakah.
Yeah.
Because, you know, the Prophet says, "Aysarahunna mahran, aktharahunna barakah." The one who has the easier dowry, the aysar, the easier one, it has more barakah, has more blessings.
I use the thing about the mass wedding. Yeah, subhanAllah, we see it here. Here's some photos for that.
So you see these, you know, mass weddings in the spirit of making things easy, facilitating a pathway for marriage to be had, and for them to ensure that they can fulfill this part of their life meaningfully, right? Meaningfully, and that's something for us to think about, is because it's a communal project. It's a big communal project. It's not, you know, just a few people who have the financial means, who this is accessible to, or they have the family networks this is accessible to. No, it's like, how do we as a community facilitate for the needs of our community?
Right.
And so the more we think in those terms, and it's not just it's beyond just the scope of my children.
Yeah, absolutely.
I should be invested in all of my, like when I go to the masjid or I go to the community spaces and I see all these young children, like, you know, subhanAllah, my wife and I actually talk about this when we see all the kids say, who's going to marry these girls? And these girls, who's going to marry these boys? And they're still, but like getting to the point where, how are they going to get married? Yeah. Because we need to think about this as a communal project, and it has to be simple, it has to be accessible. We have to really look for nastajlib, the barakah from the divine. We need to summon the divine blessing into our lives. And that comes through this, you know, your father, what he did, facilitates for barakah. Khalas, simple, this is a good man. We have some property, some land, some real estate in our basement. We'll turn it into a nice little dwelling for them. I'm sure they're still not living there. They moved on, you know, they moved on. Alhamdulillah, Rabbina bi barak. Sidqan, Rabbina bi barak. So if you over engineer it too much on the front end, thinking that everything has to line up perfectly, and then you realize, wait, we have nothing lined up because the marriage is like 2, 3, 5 months in, it's like falling apart.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's, you know, you're bringing back so many memories. When I got married, was it 18, 19 years ago? My father-in-law, Ibrahim Bukar, may Allah bless him, a man who loves Allah and his messenger, he's a surgeon. So he had one question for me, you know, when I came to ask for his daughter, you know, he knew me and he knew my family. He said, Moutasem, do you have insurance? Insurance? Like, yeah, I have insurance. Why? Coming from a medical background, he sees all these people coming in. He just wants to make sure that his daughter, if she has to go to the hospital, she's going to be taken care of. So, we have insurance. So yeah, let's not complicate things to everyone that's out there. If you find people of Allah, people who love His Messenger, sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa ala alihi, don't ask for these dowries of 200, 150,000. Make it easy, and then you have them $1 million and this and that, and all of these stipulations. Like, let's not make it too difficult. And